Welcome back to Waking Up with Mindful Serenity, and we're going to continue with answering questions from the jar. Instead of pulling out a question, I want to go back to a question I recently answered about loneliness and being alone. I do not feel that I answered the personalization of that question very well because I think the person who was asking it was feeling lonely and wanted to be validated for that loneliness and needed to be heard for their loneliness and wanted that addressed. There was an important component of that question that said, how do I handle my loneliness? And I went on and on, probably based on a spiritual ego that popped up out of somewhere, about the difference between aloneness and loneliness. And I did not attempt to answer the personal nature of that question. So I'd like to go back to that. I'll begin by taking a deep breath. And I'll set my alarm here. And I will do my best to answer that question for that person in a way. I hope that helps. How do I handle my loneliness? So in that question, we hear again this need to handle something, to deal with something that the person refers to in the first nature as belonging to the my or the me or the I, the my loneliness. So this is very personal to them. They, as a human being, are experiencing loneliness. I would begin by suggesting that, and again, any advice I give here is not professional by any means, and it probably has riddled with imperfection, and I want the person to take this with a grain of salt, to listen. If something resonates, great, but, there are experts out there that can help with this issue if it becomes a problem. That's more of a problem to the individual. But regardless, the first thing I would ask this person to evaluate or to look at or examine is the fact that loneliness is a human condition. And though it feels so individualized at the time, and they may feel like they're the only person at this point feeling lonely, because that's what loneliness does, right? It separates us even further from the rest of the pack. So if they're feeling that, just recognize that they're not alone in their loneliness, if that helps. It is a very normal human condition to feel lonely at times, and there's nothing wrong with them for feeling lonely. That they are just noticing one of the very human habitual tendencies in all of us, in themselves. So kudos for them for noticing that they feel lonely. Kudos for them for realizing that they have this experience and becoming aware of it, because that is the first step to handling anything that we're experiencing, right? Is awareness of what's going on. Most of the times we feel something like loneliness and we push it down. We don't want to feel it, so we do distract anything from that feeling of loneliness. Because often associated with loneliness is that boredom feeling and this restlessness that we have to do something about it, to fix it, to end it right away, because it's bad, it's wrong, it shouldn't be, and we got to change it. And I think by simply recognizing and accepting the fact that we feel lonely, we always need to begin there, because that is something that will take us further rather than resisting. So we have to notice that we feel lonely like this individual did. And then, instead of resisting, and be aware of that human tendency to resist these uncomfortable feelings. And we often resist them through activity, through numbing behaviors, through, getting together with people who we don't actually feel less lonely with, but we feel like the physical connection is going to do something, and that in itself can become problematic. So we do have a lot of habitual tendencies when it comes to these uncomfortable feelings, right? A way of handling them that are not necessarily wholesome or healthy. And so resistance is the biggest one. When we resist what we're feeling actually persists. It doesn't go away. And stuffing down the loneliness, pretending it's not there, pushing it down, just adds another layer to our samskara layers, causes more problem in the long run, more things we have to purify from and change from. So we have to be aware of that as well. So the person recognizes they feel lonely, and they're asking what they can do about it. So let's look at this. How can I handle it? Now, handling and dealing with something is different than fixing something, right? Because a lot of times we feel that in order to deal with something, we have to fix it or change it. I have to stop the loneliness. I have to stop myself from feeling it because it doesn't feel comfortable. And that tendency is not going to get us to where we want to be. handling loneliness is accepting the feeling of loneliness, allowing the feeling of loneliness, allowing it to come up, experiencing it, feeling it fully as one of the many, many experiences we humans are here to experience, right? For our growth potential. We're all here to learn and feel everything. So consciousness, and I'm going to get a little woo again, consciousness can experience life through us. So consciousness is experiencing this loneliness. And this is where the my comes in. So we need to replace that my and realize that it is not your loneliness that you're feeling. The human, the emotional component, the psyche of this human, this idea we have of who we are, this me-ness is experiencing the loneliness. But beyond that is the I that is aware of the human feeling lonely. And when we go back into this I, we step back into that aloneness again, which is different from loneliness. We step back into the solitude where we can, instead of trying to do something and stopping the loneliness, we sit back and we allow it and experience it from here, because we see it as an experience as human as heaven and not who we are. We are not lonely. This human is experiencing one of the many things humans can experience by not possibly being in physical proximity to another human being or another being, or feeling emotionally disconnected, right? So we step back here. And that will help us to handle the loneliness, create distance between the loneliness and the person feeling lonely and the I, not the my, of the loneliness experience and how they are experiencing it by simply observing and watching and experiencing and allowing. So that might help. The other thing we can do with our loneliness when we recognize it within us is to see the tendency we have to distract from it and to use it as an opportunity to do something different. Okay, because most of the times when we feel lonely or bored, we want to change it. Pascal said that the source of all human suffering, or man's suffering, is his inability to sit quietly in a room alone. We have this thing that alone is bad, alone is wrong, alone is not what humans are supposed to be, because when we're alone, we're stuck with all the stuff going on in our heads and what's coming up inside, these unpleasant feelings like loneliness, and we're trying to escape them. So we spend the majority of our life running from and escaping, pushing down, repressing, suppressing, hiding from, numbing from these uncomfortable human experiences that we're here to experience. And as we learn, you can't run from them. You know, they're going to catch up with you. They're going to catch up with us eventually. So it's best to just sit with them, allow them to come up, experience them, say, hey, loneliness, I feel you. I see you coming up here. See, I'm feeling loneliness. What do you have here? What are you here to tell me? And if we look deeply enough into loneliness, as the Buddhist philosophy would encourage us to do, to look deeply into these feelings and to explore them and examine them, we'll say, what is the real source of my loneliness? Is it the fact that right now I don't have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or I don't have a friend with me, or I'm alone in this room, physically alone in this room? Or is it because there's something else I'm disconnected from? Maybe I'm disconnected from who I truly am. You know, they say self-love is the greatest love, and it is the healer of everything, right? So when we start recognizing the self within and start going towards that rather than seeking this end of loneliness by going outward, we're going to connect to something so much deeper that's going to take away that experience of loneliness, but more so it's going to help us to advance in our evolution as human beings. We're going to grow from it. So we can use this opportunity of loneliness to look deeply into the experience and the emotional experience, to question what we're really lonely from, to recognize that disconnect we have with self, with the self with a capital S, who we truly are, the Atman. Someone would refer to it, the soul. Others would refer to it as our God source, our field of consciousness, whatever you want to refer to it at. There's something deeper within us that goes beyond the body, with the separate body lines and this little persona or personality we created with our minds and our personal minds, that we are disconnected from. through all our seeking to end this alone feeling we have out there, we are sometimes taken from the only connection we truly need, and that is with the self with a capital S. So it is a wonderful opportunity when we experience loneliness to look deeply into it and to see and question what we're really disconnected from. And then when you realize you're disconnected from this inner self, this self with a capital S, or this consciousness that you truly are, you start slipping back into it and start experiencing it. And the loneliness will go away. And you will rejoice in the experience of being alone without feeling lonely. But it begins with sitting with that restlessness and that boredom and that uncomfortable feeling of feeling lonely. Allowing it, accepting it, allowing it, exploring it, examining it, and then honoring it for the teaching that it gives you. It's taking you further and deeper, and it's going to help with your healing in the long run. And then from there, we seek other beings for the sake of sharing what we've learned rather than trying to end that uncomfortable feeling. Well, I hope that helps more than the last question did. Thank you so much for joining me, and namaste.